Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, the latest on Sheriff Joe Arpaio's contempt of court hearing, and we'll look at 3 competing plans to pay for education in Arizona. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Aaliyah Rao of the Arizona Republic. Sheriff Joe Arpaio takes a stand in his contempt of court hearing, again subdued, and again kind of blaming subordinates and not really taking too much responsibility. Give us a little bit of an overview here.
Yeah, very much. I mean, Arpaio's deflecting a lot of this to people who worked for him, saying these were not decisions. These are decisions that he delegated to others and let them make the decision and really take the heat, or hopefully shifting the blame away from him in this contempt of court hearing.
You know, it's hard not to watch this and think of all the mafia dons that get busted in places like New York, who, you know, when they're in control and I run everything, and then they get hauled into court and they show up in their slippers in the bathrobe. I'm just a poor old man. I didn't know what was going on. You know, there are 2 Joe Arpaios. The one who we see at the press conferences, I'm the sheriff, or actually it's not I'm the sheriff, since he speaks of himself only in the 3rd person, and then this sort of calm, demeanored, almost hushed tones in the courthouse of saying, well, you know, I sort of left that to my underlings.
And yet they played some video clips of the sheriff, of all the people, and they also introduced evidence of depositions and previous testimonies, and they basically used his words against him.
Yeah, I mean, the big question right now is, was this intentional? Who knew what when? And kind of, you know, a lot of the audio, a lot of the recordings is you know, conversations and statements, and it's just a question of, did he know? Was it intentional? And is this a criminal issue or is it a civil issue? And will Sheriff Joe go to jail?
And this is Chris. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, not only are they using his own words against him, they're using his former attorney against him.
Interesting. Whatever happened to attorney-client privilege? I mean, apparently the judge thought that didn't apply in this case?
He did, and Tim Casey, who had represented Sheriff Arpaio, testified over the protests of Casey's own attorney. But Mr. Casey had resigned as Arpaio's client. They wanted to understand what led up to that.
Well, and this gets real tricky, as you point out, with attorney-client privilege, because there is no attorney-client privilege if the attorney is helping you break the law. Now, that's obviously to be determined here, but clearly the allegations are, and the tapes are, the sheriff saying, I'm not going to let any federal judge tell me what to do. I'm the sheriff of this county. And then him saying, well, you know, no, Jerry Sheridan didn't tell me what was going on. You know, a lot of other people were doing things and really had no idea. And
again, the attorney basically said he quit because the sheriff just simply wouldn't listen to him on a variety of things, including the Seattle informant, which apparently everyone involved just thought bogus, get away from this. But one individual thought there was something there. Joe Arpaio.
Well, you Google this guy and you find, you know, there were issues on the East Coast with the federal government. There were issues in Nevada, all kinds of situations where he was supposedly accessing information, providing information, informing information that turned out to be completely bogus. And yet Sheriff Joe, according to the testimony, decided that he wasn't interested in what everybody had to say about this guy. He was going to go ahead and hire him. And there was an allegation, and it was secondhand, it wasn't firsthand, that Arpaio did spend $10,000 of his own money to continue to pay this guy when they started to run out of money. Now, Arpaio's attorney said he did not believe that was the case. He had no such information.
And part of what's interesting is there's various cover stories. Well, we heard that there were 150,000 Arizonans who were having their bank accounts looked at. And I was in this to find out about that. So exactly where did the federal judge fit into this? And that's the problem, is keeping all these stories straight.
Well, and again, the informant had the idea that the FBI was looking into people and wiretapping, and that there was some sort of, and maybe bank fraud allegations going on. But there's also, I mean, and again, Arpaio's side says this simply didn't happen, but the informant also said collusion, possible collusion between Judge Snow and the Department of Justice. And if that were the case, that's a big deal, but Nothing.
If
And
that were the case.
And
you
now
know,
they're saying they didn't even, and now Arpaio's, no, we didn't question him about that at all.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that's what's the old saying? If my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a trolley. You know, I mean, come on now. You know, you've got, certainly if that were the case, that would be true. But again, given the guy's credibility, and like you say, any fool with a Twitter account or a Google account could find it out. You know, is this really what you rely on? And there's just, it's piling up. And as you point out, the question is civil contempt or criminal. I mean, clearly the judge, 18 months after he issued his order to stop these immigration arrests, these immigration raids, he was still doing it, or the department was still doing it.
They admit that. There's no question. They've already admitted that, but it was inadvertent, they say.
It was inadvertent. We didn't know what the judge meant, what he said. You know, somehow federal court orders somehow didn't escape the sheriff. Does it rise to the level of criminal contempt? That's a really high bar.
Last question on this. Are folks, are they following this, or is there a little bit of Arpaio fatigue, or what do you sense out there?
The people that are following it are really following it. They probably know more than we do about it. They've watched everything they can get their hands on. I think there's probably some fatigue. I think it's a question of, you know, is this the thing that, you know, according to some people, finally takes Sheriff Joe down? You know, we've seen other things, and he manages, you know, he's like a duck. It all rolls off. Is this the thing? And I think there's a lot of people watching to say, okay, is this the time?
I think, yeah, there's fatigue, and there's also, I think most people, many voters in Maricopa kind of made up their minds. You know, there's people that just think the sheriff's just, you know, not an upstanding person. He's not being truthful in this, and others who are with him, you know, till the last dog dies.
But until we get a credible candidate, somebody who can win, somebody who doesn't have certain things in his past that can be used against him, it's going to be hard to shove them out of there until they take them out of there in a box.
Be that as it may, will we continue to see mostly Republican candidates flocking to Arpaio for his endorsement?
It seems to be tapering off, but the fact is, if you've got a shot with Arpaio, you know, as Aaliyah points out, there are people, you know, who like him no matter what. And among certain groups, that helps. It's, you know, it's, I got the endorsement of sheriff, or here's a picture of me with the sheriff. Isn't this great? Until he becomes poison, that's going to continue. All
right, we have a lot to talk about here regarding education funding plan. Everyone and their brother has got an education funding plan.
Yeah, what's yours, Ted?
I'm going to release mine Monday on a press conference. Everyone else is doing it. Let's start with the Republican plan and what legislative leadership is looking at doing and how viable that may be.
Well, this is something that they unveiled the day that the everybody threw in the towel on a negotiated settlement with the arbitrators in the long-running school funding lawsuit. And it's 4 points, a 4-point plan led by Senate President Andy Biggs and House Speaker David Gowan. They want to put in some money, take some money from the land trust, as Governor Ducey has proposed, but they're a little iffy on how much. Adjust the inflation funding factor that is right now a big part of the school funding formula. They want to adjust it downward. The law now says up to 2%. They want to make it, I think, 1.6%. They want to take money from the First Things First fund, which is voter protected, so that, like the inflation funding factor, would need voter approval. And then they want to take some money out of the rainy day fund and out of the surplus that our state budget has, and put this all together, do a special session, and we've fixed education.
Why would you think that voters would approve you knocking down that interest, inflation adjustment interest rate from 2% down to 1.6? They need to approve that. Why would voters do that when their voter mandate to begin with wasn't followed?
And that's the key question. We've had a requirement for inflation funding, heck, going back to the 90s when Fife Symington was governor, and there were years Fife said, well, we don't have the money, so we won't give it to you. And there were years where Fife Symington said, you don't need the money, we won't give it to you, which is why it became voter protected, which is why in 2000, voters not only put in the inflation mandate of up to 2%, but then also agreed to tax themselves 0.6 of a cent on top of the sales tax to help pay for that. So this isn't like we're draining the budget. This is money earmarked for a lot of that. And there's no way that I believe that they're going to go back and say, oh, we're going to trust the legislature again.
And they have to ask voters to once again, and they've tried this before, sweep money out of First Things First.
Right. Yeah.
Again, the viability of these ideas.
First things first is early childhood education. I mean, this is the little bitty kids. And the idea is, okay, you know, do you want to take all the money from the little kids and give it to the big kids? And who wins? You know, pick your favorite child. Which one would you like to get money for this year? And yeah, I mean, they've tried that with First Things First, and there's very little interest, it seems like, from the public to mess with that money.
But I've got to wonder, not that there's any Machiavellian things going on at the Capitol, whether there are some Republicans wondering, you know, we'll put it to the voters, and then if the voters reject it, that'll show us that they believe there's enough money going into education. Andy Biggs believes that. Andy Biggs will tell you, well, money doesn't equate to it, and I don't see where they need more money. Never mind the report showing us at 51st in the nation for teacher pay. Never mind the report showing us 49th in the nation for state funding. Never mind the study that came out showed that Arizona is the third worst place in the nation to be a teacher. He believes money isn't the issue, because look, we have some basis schools and some schools in Mesa that are doing well with $7,000.
But if voters vote no, will lawmakers really think that that voters are saying you're already spending enough already, or will they just say knock it off and start spending more? I mean, is that honestly a part of the equation there?
It could be. I mean, you know, it's a bit of a Rorschach test, and it's what you see, or what you want to see. It would also depend on what the if this thing even gets to the ballot, which I highly doubt it will, what the message is, what the talk is about this from voters. I mean, again, voters approved First Things First, and as Aaliyah said, it's designed to help preschool kids, so it's to get kids ready to go to school into a system that most voters believe is already underfunded. So,
and what's also happening, and you know, I know it's on your list, is we've got all competitive proposals out there. Diane Douglas talked about hers again earlier this week. She said, we've got the money. We have a $325 million cash carry forward / surplus, depending on what word you want to use. We got $460 million in a rainy day fund, and we don't need to play these games.
Speaking of competing, I'll get to Douglas in a second here. Democrats, though, came out with their ideas, and that involves a whole lot of money going into education, and critics are saying, where are you getting the money from, correct?
They did. They put out their plan, and the primary part of it is, let's give $285 million immediately this year to the schools from, again, the surplus or the extra money. And then going forward, it would be $250 million. They got massive criticism from the Republicans saying, wait a minute, you have no idea what's going to happen 5 years from now. You could put us in a giant hole. We'd be back where we were. But their number came from JLBC. JLBC, in a recent report, said, you know, we have about $300 million extra, about 250 of it we think could be ongoing money. So there, but again, nobody has much call.
All of these things hinge, you know, on a certain level of projection. I mean, we don't know what's
Yes.
going to be happening in 5 years. I mean, First Things First, which gets its money from a tobacco tax. Well, hello, you know, tobacco usage rates have been declining, not precipitously, but you know, that's probably going to only get smaller as time goes on. So everybody wants to put a fair amount of money. It's not just the Democrats, but if you add everything up, it's a fair amount of money from most quarters. And how sustainable that is, as long as you don't enshrine it in the Constitution, then it becomes a year-to-year legislative decision.
But again, the criticism on the Democrats' plan is that you are expecting for a certain kind of growth here over the next 10 years.
Yes.
And obviously no one can predict that kind of growth, but the critics are saying we can't, Republicans are basically, we can't count on that.
Well, you can't count on anything, although I think that people who are giving up tobacco are going to take up marijuana, but that's a whole other issue that'll be on the
Somehow
ballot.
you managed to fit it in.
Yes, I know. But here's the other thing that has really gotten attention in the Democrats' plan that a lot of Republicans like. We currently allow corporations to divert $51 million a year of what they would otherwise go to the general fund and presumably schools to help pay for scholarships for private and parochial schools. They have built in an inflator, not 2%, 20% a year. By 2020, that means they can divert $100 million a year. By 2030, that number is $660 million. And what the Democrats have said is rather than diverting that much money, if we take the savings from that and just capping it at $51 million, we will have more money for public schools.
How many Republicans, though, do you think would go along with freezing that credit?
Very few. You know, it's a very popular program with Republicans. It's a very popular program with corporations. I don't know. I think it'd be a hard sell.
You might get, though, enough Republicans to vote against it that if they ally with the Democrats, they could put a cap on it. I mean, there have been economic forecasters who have said this thing needs a cap, or it's just going to drain the general fund.
And in fact, Heather Carter, who's a Republican from Cave Creek, and Kate Brophy-McGee, who's a Republican from Phoenix, tried to do exactly that last year in the middle of the budget, and were basically sort of talked off the ledge. There is a lot of sentiment out there from public school supporters on the Republican side in the House to say, look, we're not taking away the $51 million, but you cannot let it grow at that rate.
Okay, so, and again, we should mention the Democrats' plan. No tax increase there either. They say shove the money over there and go from there. I think President Biggs, who's on the show this week, I asked him about this. He said it was not worth the napkin it was written on.
It was surprisingly vehement, his response to that. He's usually a very calm, measured guy, and it was quite the statement that he's been making this week, which drew some speculation as to why he was so.
Same for the governor, and it does.
The governor's office came out pretty strong, didn't
my
they?
My speculation is, are they hitting a nerve? There.
Interesting. Well, it's time again for our weekly Diane Douglas update, and this one actually deals with yet another competing plan for education funding, and she basically says, we got $400 million, send it right now to teachers.
And we do have $400 million. And she recognizes that we may not have $400 million a year, but what she's doing is she's also relying a bit on the trust fund, but only above a certain level. She's sort of aligned herself with State Treasurer Jeff DeWitt, who said, look, we can take out a little more without going into the principal. But once you go into the corpus of the trust, now you can bring the money out, certainly, but then again, you're hurting it down the road. And so she's saying, I'm aligned with DeWitt, we'll use that as a cushion. And she said, we can do this. And she sat there at a press conference, you know, Leah and I both covered her yesterday, and said, look at the numbers on teacher salaries. Look at the fact that 45% of teachers in Arizona leave after the first 2 years. You cannot get quality education based on that.
At teacher salaries or reducing classroom size. She says, pick whatever you want to spend it on, but you've got the money, spend it. She also had some other, obviously she wants to get rid of Common Core, nothing to do with funding here, but she wants, the Board of Education, how likely are they going to take that up?
I don't know, it's a good question. I mean, you know, do see a couple times it's come out against Common Core, but then we haven't seen any direct action from him. You know, the board are his appointees, but I don't know. I mean, it's a sticky situation.
Well, I talked to Greg Miller, who's the board president, last night after her speech, and he said, look, after the governor came in and said, do something, he said, we formed a committee. We are going to be making modifications. We do not need to blow it up a la Diane Douglas, and we can go ahead and make modifications and make it more an Arizona plan.
And also pushed things like phonics and reading, math, civics, economics, emphasize cultural diversity, getting rid of hate kind of instruction and curriculum, which on the surface sounds, well, my goodness, that's rather a liberal leaning for that. But basically what she's doing is he's looking at race-specific classrooms.
Well, isn't that a reaction to the whole debate that's been happening around Tucson with its Hispanic curriculum? And I will say that, I mean, if Douglas based a lot of this on her statewide listening tour, and if she is faithfully reporting back what she heard from people who showed up at her meetings, maybe people should listen to that. I mean, these were educators, parents, I don't know, business people.
There were some oddballs in there. I mean, for example, she wants more time for lunch because she said, now that we're serving healthier meals, it takes kids more time to eat the apple than it does the fries.
Have you ever tried to eat lunch with the kids in the classroom? You can't possibly, I've done it recently, you can't possibly finish in time to get to recess and get to play. I love that one. That's a great suggestion.
And then, along the lines of getting rid of Common Core, she wants to do something the legislature rejected this past session, which is allow parents to opt out of standardized testing for their kids. So this is a grab bag of ideas.
All right. Speaking of Diane Douglas, the Board of Education, they've been talking about this, considering this. They went ahead and sued her for basically not doing her job, not fulfilling her duties.
Right. I mean, this is back to the whole issue of some folks moving out and who has access to computers and what building and where, and basically saying that these investigators do not have access outside of the Department of Ed building to the information that they need to investigate, serious allegations against teachers. And then also this question about who maintains the website and who should have control over. But the big issue seems to be access to this information on these teachers.
And the bigger issue is who controls the Board of Education.
Well, that's still in court. I mean, Douglas lost the first round, but it's on appeal, and this issue will be decided either in court or perhaps the legislature might want to take that up and clarify that in law.
That's a really good point. I mean, wasn't that supposed to happen last? What happened to that idea?
It did, and in fact, Diane had even signed off on something that's clarified that the board controlled its own employees, and then some of her supporters, I think, that got their backs up, and the bill blew up, and late in the session. There are conflicts in the law. It does say that the employees report to her, even though they're board employees. But you've still got a constitutionally created board that sets the policy, that has to be able to tell its employees what to do. And so you're going to have these kind of conflicts there, and it's going to require, the trial court ruling that Mary Jo was talking about, the judge said, look, this is a political battle.
Well, and that's a good point. He said that's a political battle. Why isn't the Board of Education suit a political battle as well?
It probably is.
Yeah,
that was the response, in fact, that Charles Tack made. He's Diane's publicist. And he said, well, how come it was political when we sued them, but now when they sue us, it's not political?
Well, who's saying it's not political? I mean, let's let a judge weigh in on this, and maybe he'll look at the other judge's ruling and see if he agrees with that.
All right, so we wait for the judges, as we always seem to be doing.
Yes.
Mark Killian resigns from the Board of Regents. He's still at the Department of Agriculture, correct?
Yes.
But he resigns from the Board of Regents. This is the same Mark Killian that criticized the governor and criticized spending cuts, funding cuts on universities. Anything to do with the resignation?
Well, he says he wasn't forced out, and I knew Mark in his days when he was House Speaker, and he's a straight shooter. He's very conservative, but he's a straight shooter. He never let the fact that he was a supporter of the governor keep from talking about suing over the issue of adequate funding. But he said the connection is, look, I've got a Department of Agriculture whose budget was cut 30%. Sound familiar? Like the university said, I have to spend full time trying to get this agency's budget back up, and I can't be doing that and be doing the regent's work. So this gives the governor a chance to put in a replacement, perhaps somebody a little less confrontatory.
But what's different between the two parallels you draw about the cuts to ag and the cuts to the Board of Education is that as a regent, Killian spoke out very loudly and very strongly about the harm that those cuts would do. He isn't saying that about, as the governor's appointee to head an agency, he's not singing that same tune.
He is saying, he's saying, look, we've got fire ants we can't do inspections on. He's saying, we're supposed to be inspecting pet food. I don't know if the dog food you're buying at the grocery store is what it's promised to be. So he's not the person who tends to stay quiet. But you're right. The difference is the regents are constitutionally created, and he had a lot more power there to say, governor, legislators, you're wrong.
And he was outspoken, saying the state ought to think about suing for not upholding constitutional duty there with funding. Before we go, we've got about a minute or so left here. Audit, Department of Child Services or Child Safety or whatever they're calling DCS these days, kind of put them at risk a little bit, or blame, I should say, a little bit.
Right, yeah, this audit took a look at the practices that the agency follows for assessing, should we take a kid out of their home? Are they safe enough with their parents, or do we see enough evidence here that we should remove them and put them in foster care? And the audit found some problems with that. They feel that the guidelines are not crystal clear. They're not clear cut. There's a lot of room for discretion by caseworkers, which other people would argue you need some discretion in there. You can't put them all in the same category. They also said that many caseworkers, when it comes down to having a meeting with the family to decide, because you meet with the family and the caseworkers, they meet together to try to decide what are we going to do with these kids, that often the caseworkers come in with their minds made up that, presumably that the kid's got to go, and they don't listen to the family. So this is a cautionary warning.
And we're still dealing with 17,000 some odd kids removed from homes, backlog of 15,000. I mean, there's...
Well, that's been the problem, is that you've got, Greg McKay came in and said, we're going to deal with this backlog. They got rid of Charles Flanagan. Well, the backlog has only grown. And in fact, he made a very startling admission to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee saying, quote, the money was not well spent. It's always wonderful when
boy.
you're asking for more money.
And real quickly, judge says go ahead with that lawsuit against foster care system.
Right, this is a federal lawsuit, and the state wanted out of it, and Judge Silver said, nope, we're going to proceed because we've got to give these kids their day in court.
All right. Thank you so much. Good stuff. Thanks for being here. Monday on Arizona Horizon, former NATO Ambassador Kurt Volker makes his monthly appearance to discuss the latest in foreign affairs, and we'll hear about an arts district that was designated a great place in Phoenix by the American Planning Association. That's Monday on Arizona Horizon. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.